Welcome to SethCraft. I'm currently building a 20 by 30 workshop and it's time to install some shelves. The walls that I have here in this shop are right at 10 foot tall, which means I have plenty of space to install some shelving. So at the 8-foot mark from the floor, I'm going to have a shelf going all the way around this room. And so the first thing I want to do is build lots and lots of these custom shelf brackets. So this right here is going to be a piece that attaches to the wall. I've got these triangles here that act as the support. They're both wood glue and screwed together. And then this is the actual piece that sticks out for the shelf to go onto. Now, I'm going to put can lights on the underside of my shelf. So this space up under here will have a piece of plywood going across that I can drill holes into and have my can lights. So it's going to be a nice looking shelf. I'm also going to put a piece of plywood here to kind of finish out everything. So our first step is to build lots and lots of these. Taking a look at my bracket, the full length from one side to the other is 24 inches. So in order to cut this to the proper length, based on this ripped down 2x4, I need to have 22¼ inches. So instead of measuring this and marking it every time with the tape measure, I have set up a template block that I can just set right here. I can make sure it's flush on the end and then take my pencil and make a mark there and then move on and do it again down here, just matching up that previous pencil mark. Move down to the side and continue down the line until I have lots of these cut out. Oftentimes I will use my speed square as a guide to make sure my cut is straight. Now this piece right here is 18 inches long, so that there is plenty of space to put screws in for support on the wall. And you can see it has been ripped in half. So in order to cut that piece out, I'm going to take my speed square, and if I use the pencil mark here at the 1 3/4, then I will be able to place my mark along here, and that is ripping this 2x4 down the middle. So I'm just going to trace down the middle all the way to the end. Now that I have the center line drawn out, I want to take my tape measure and go along every 18 inches and place a mark there. And then I can use my speed square again here to transfer that line all the way across. And now what I want to do is rip down the middle first and then come back and cut at these 18-inch places. Because I'm pressing fairly hard into this board, I'm going to put some clamps here on this end and keep it in place while I rip down the other side. The last thing that needs to be cut out to make these brackets is this triangle. We're going to have a whole bunch of those as well. Those are very crucial for the support of this shelf. So in order to find that, I have used my square set to the 45° over here, and this is 1 foot or 12 inches. So let me show you how I use this to cut out the triangles. I'm using 1/2 inch plywood because I had several scraps left over from whenever I put the walls up. And so if I take my square set to the 45°, I can then place it here on the edge of my plywood. This is the factory edge down here. And with the 45°, I can match up the end right here. And then if I draw a line right there, I will know that that is the triangle that I want to cut out. Now after I've cut out one of them, I then make a template so I can easily just go back through here and copy these out. But one thing that I found to be very helpful, if you take this distance right here, which is about 8½, which actually you can use this one here. We got 8¼ excuse me. So if you move up from the top here, you can then draw a line at 8¼ and then do that over here on this end as well. And then if I take a straight edge and draw that line, I can then very easily fill in the 45s in here and make these triangles a lot faster than if I tried to go through and use the square on all of them. As you can see, this process takes a while, but there is my first triangle. So I have about 19 more of those to go on this piece of plywood, and then we will get to work putting this bracket together. I now have the 4 components required to put one of these brackets together. So to start off with this assembly, I take my 18-inch ripped down 2x4 and I make a mark here at the 3-inch from one of the ends. And that right there is going to be where the support piece goes. So that's where this long board right here is going to go. But first of all, I like to flip this over here and put in 2 screws before I put that piece of wood there. I have some 3.5-inch screws. I'm just going to get these started here in the back side of this ripped down 18-inch piece. And now I can flip this over, get my, what was that, 22.25-inch piece lined up here, and then get that screwed in. Just keeping that line that I drew here with the bottom of the board. Now that I have that done, it's time to get these triangular pieces installed. Now the thing to remember with this is that I'm going to be putting a board down here to add as decoration. And so this right here can't protrude down below this piece. So I need to make sure I move this over and come down far enough that that piece, that little corner right there, is hidden behind the triangle. So somewhere right in there. So first of all, I'm going to use some of this wood glue. Something like that. Flip this over, and then on the top up here, I'm going to make sure that I have stepped down, 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And then this side over here needs to be flush with that board to go against the wall. So now I'm just going to be using some 1.5-inch screws. I found that 4 in each side is sufficient. Now I can flip this over and do the same with the other bracket piece. All right, there we go. I have another one of these brackets built. Now I have to have a whole bunch of these. Essentially every time there is a stud on the wall, I'm going to mount one of these to it. So I can put 3 or 4 screws up here and then 1 down here in the bottom, and that will lock this into the wall so we can put the lower portion of the shelf, the actual shelf top up here, and then a front plate as well. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of these without you, and then we will get in here and start putting these on the wall. I finished building lots of these brackets, as you can see, and I have put some screws in here while I was on the ground so it's easier to put up here on the wall. So I'm here at the 8-foot mark on the wall where I'm going to be putting this bracket and the shelf as well. I've got screws visible from where I put my plywood up, and I'm going to use those as a guide for where my stud placement is. And I just want to, on the first one here, get it up here on the wall and then get one of these screws started. And now I can use a level to put here on the side and see where I need to move this to get it leveled out here. I got my adjustment tool here so I can get this where it needs to be. There we go, that's better. All right, now that I have that where it needs to be, I'm gonna go ahead and get some more of these screws put in here. Now that I have the first one done, I'm going to use my level to put the second one up. I will simply put the level on top of the current one and then find where level is on the next one and get it attached into the wall just like the first. I have the second bracket ready, and I can tell my stud is right here on the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in the general location of where this should go, and then take my level, place it across the two different brackets, and then I can adjust this up or down to make sure that it's level with the previous one. And just like before, I'm going to take my level this way. There's two brackets, very well installed. Now, I've got a whole bunch more of these to go, so I will bring you back when I have this whole row done here. I now have all the brackets up here that I currently have built. So we're going to go on and move to the next step, which is putting a piece of plywood up underneath here. The reason for that is because I want can lights to be here shining down on my work surfaces. So you could use sheetrock or other material, but for me, I have an abundance of available 1/2 inch plywood. And so what we need to cut that at is 19 inches to go up under here. So I'm going to have 8 feet by 19 inches to cut. I've got a 4x8 sheet of 1/2 inch plywood. I'm going to mark out 19 inches on this in a couple of different spots, and then I will use a straight edge to connect those lines and then cut this with my saw, and we'll get it up here on the bottom of our shelf. I now have my piece of plywood ready to go up here. Now, getting this up here by myself can be a little bit of a hassle. So what I've found to work decently well is to set a clamp up here on this back end, and that will hold this up while I'm getting the front screwed into place. Clamp holds the back piece on. This is what the shelf looks like with the plywood underneath. Now I'm also going to be adding a piece that will cover these triangular bits right here. Now before I do that, I'm going to install can lights. So we're going to leave this shelf in here as is and move on to this next spot in here. As you can see, I've already finished getting the shelf done to this point with the can lights installed. And so we're going to be moving on to putting the 3/4 inch plywood on top to make the shelf for stuff to be stored on, and then we'll be putting a face plate on here to hide the wood that's exposed. So let's go ahead and get to work doing that. Now I don't intend on putting anything super heavy on these shelves here in my future office space, and so I'm going to put 1/2 inch plywood up here. So let's see what we need here. From the wall out is 24 inches, so I can have my piece cut at 24 inch. But we're going to have to cut out all of the support pieces in the back, which are about 1.5 inches out. So we'll go ahead and cut 24 inch, get it placed up here, and then we can trace around all of these support bits back here and cut those out with the jigsaw. All right, I'm going to mark all this at 24 inch. I have the plywood pressed all the way against this wall over here. So now all of these supports can be marked and cut out. So I believe what I'm going to do is place my speed square in here, and that will keep my line consistent out from that. So let's see what we can do about it here. I'm just holding the camera with one hand. So anyway, that'll let me mark right there, and then I can move over here to the other side. Place my speed square and then mark along there as well. Now as far as this piece goes, it is 1.5 inches, so I'll probably go out a little bit more to make sure that I have plenty of room there. And whenever I do my jigsaw cut, I will make sure to be on the outside of my line so that I don't have any issues with sliding this in here. So I'm gonna go down the line here and get the rest of these marked out on this piece of plywood, pull it back down, and we will work with the jigsaw. Here's the notch I need to cut out. I'm gonna use a jigsaw for this. Maybe the best option, we'll find out. Not too bad. I'm gonna go through here and cut the rest of these out, and we'll get this piece of plywood where it belongs. All of the notches are now cut out. Let's see how well I did here by sliding this up against the wall and press it into place. Very nice. Worked out really good. Looks like everything is pretty smooth there with the edge of that board. So we'll go ahead and lock this down with some screws, and then we will put the face on here, and we will consider this to be done. Now that I have the top piece of plywood on here, it's time to get this face on. And so I need to figure out what the length is from this point right here over to the corner over here. I don't have to go the whole way to the wall because the other side is going to be blocking that. So let me just check this out here. We've got 6 foot and 3/4 inch. So we know that dimension. And now this one needs to be 4.5. So got 4.5 up here, 6 foot and 3/4 inch. All right, using my tape measure, I can find 6 foot and 3/4 inch. Now using my speed square, I can find the marking for 4.5 inch, which is right here. And I can just glide this along my straight edge until I have that line all the way down here. I've got my 4.5 inch piece right here. I'm going to place this right up here and try to make everything nice and flush with both the top and the bottom. And then I'm just going to use some of these 2-inch screws to get this attached. And that's what the face plate looks like here on this shelf. Now I'm going to be painting these white so everything will blend in together and it should look pretty nice. Let's take a step up here real quick. I noticed that one of my 2x4s was sticking out just a bit there, so didn't quite cover everything. If you go up here, you can see how the shelf looks like it's floating up here. So very nice. I'll be able to put all kinds of stuff up here for storage, and then have these can lights down here that will be able to illuminate my work surfaces. I'm going to work without you to finish up the rest of these shelves, and then I will show you what all of this looks like once it is finished up. After a good bit of work, I have the shelves done here in my office space. They're also done over in the laser engraving room, and also I have shelves in the big room. Let's walk around here and I will show you everything in completion. I left off right here about 2 months ago, showing you this portion of the shelf and it's being worked on. So now everything else has been completed. I've got all the LED can lights installed. If I were to scroll around here, you can see the rest of the shelf is also done. Look how close I got to not being able to install this light over here. That was way too close. So of course there are some gaps where my hand wasn't very straight while cutting up the plywood. And some of my corners here were not desirable, but you know what? It's a workshop. It's totally fine. I did add a receptacle over here in this corner for the internet. And this is how I can control my LEDs. I'm also able to adjust the brightness there with those as well. So that's worked out. Now if I were to move in here, I've also got this shelf done. Now keep in mind I've done a whole lot more work without you, so for instance that ventilation system is started up there. I've also added a receptacle in this spot. I've added one over in that corner for the TV and one over here as well, because who knows what I'll get into. But those shelves are also all finished. Now this right here was one of the biggest oopses of the whole thing. It's got quite a gap right there, but you know what? It's gonna be fine. Okay, and lastly, let's move over here to the big room where I can show you what it looks like. Get some lighting on here as well. All right, so I added the shelf all the way around on this side, which I'm calling the woodworking area, but who knows what it's really going to be whenever I get going in here. And over here, the shelf is a little bit special. It's much more beefy or supported over here because I'm going to have a hoist over here to lift up some batteries and inverters and stuff. But it's just a short shelf over here. Now all of these are going to be plenty strong enough to hold a lot of weight. A bunch of screws in those studs there. All right, and that's the end. Now there's also a piece of plywood up above my utility closet, which I can use to store stuff as well as a shelf. Thank you so much for joining me on this shelf build. It's kind of a unique design. Now, of course, there are tons of pre-made shelves you can buy, but I wanted to have something that was very consistent all the way around the room and able to hold up a lot of weight, and I think this will do it well. I also wanted to be able to hang the recessed lights up under the shelf and be able to use the shelf for receptacles, for instance, my lighting next door, the TV, and also my ventilation system for laser engraving. So it's a multi-use shelf for sure. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below so I can hear your thoughts on what you think about these shelves, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.